What's up guys, it's Gia back with another episode of Mull It Over, a Hearthstone review show where we highlight key early game decisions from the Grandmasters, starting from the Mulligan. In week 2 of GM, a whopping 39 out of 48 last hero standing lineups included Warrior. We saw different takes on the deck, a control style from Bunny Hopper, Yarla, and Viper, and a bomb style from Swids, Bloody Face, Language Hacker, and Eddie. But no matter what extra flavor is added in, warriors in this meta all take advantage of the powerful synergy between two cards, Risky Skipper and Battle Rage, a combo originating from the Tempo style deck pioneered by HCT Philadelphia champion No Hands Gamer. Since the vast majority of warriors brought to GM this week were tempo-oriented, this whole episode will be dedicated to breaking down mulligans and early game strategies for No Hands Warrior, whose current standard list now includes Warmal Challenger, as popularized by Hunter-Ace. As a side note, No Hands himself prefers to call the deck Aggro Warrior, but I think I'll be sticking to No Hands, because certain players like Surrender and Monsanto were cutting Serpent Egg from their lists altogether. Speaking of, special shout out to No Hands Gamer himself and Week 2 America's winner, Gallon, both of whom I consulted for the info in this video. Before we get to the good stuff, let's start with some general tips for approaching a mulligan that you can apply to any class. While every deck has certain cards that are usually ideal to keep, an experienced player will recognize instances where unusual keeps can be good, or when usual keeps are subpar. To help identify those spots, ask yourself 3 questions. 1. What is my win condition in the matchup? Am I the aggressor, am I the defender, or am I flexible? 2. What's my ideal early game to get that win condition? And 3. How can my opponent respond to my ideal early game? Make no mistake, No Hands Warrior makes these 3 simple questions really complex because the deck is so dynamic. Every situation and every matchup is a little bit different, so the most important thing is not to be chained by anything I mention here. These are guidelines, not rules. Let's take a look at some of the GM's decisions to get a better idea. Regardless of matchup, the best cards to keep in this deck are usually Corsair Cache, Ankar, Warmal Challenger, and Serpent Egg. Warmal Challenger and Serpent Egg are 2 cards that probably aren't that scary individually, but they're kept because the deck is full of what I like to call payoff cards. Cards that synergize with these minions. For example, Inner Rage, Rampage, and Bloodsworn Mercenary. When you have Warmal or Egg as the target minions, cards like Inner Rage, Rampage, and Bloodsworn Mercenary are viable as keeps. You can see here that Felkane tosses Inner Rage and Rampage without having a minion to use them with, but when you have those key minions, it allows you to sometimes keep payoff cards like how Language Hacker keeps Egg with Inner Rage here, shortly after he plays the Inner Rage to get some damage onto the Druid opponent. The dream scenario, however, isn't just using Inner Rage for a bit of damage, but to use it to unlock even further payoff. Warmal plus Inner Rage plus Bloodsworn Mercenary, or Warmal plus Rampage plus Bloodsworn, are both incredibly powerful combos that take advantage of Challenger's near immortal 10 health to turn it into an offensive threat as well. In the case of Serpent Egg, you can sometimes also keep Terran Gorfiend, because together they give you a very strong turn 2 into turn 3 curve. As for Corsair Cache and Ankar, they're generally kept regardless of the matchup because they're strong early plays that don't rely on other cards in hand to be effective. In the non-bomb version, Cache always draws you a powerful turn 3 play, in either a buffed Ankar or a buffed Livewire Lance. The weapons act as efficient early game removal, which is crucial in aggro matchups, and they also generate card value, which is great in slower matchups. Ankar is kept even on its own because it gives you the best chance of getting Risky Skipper. So you might ask, if Skipper is the best card and it costs just 1 mana, shouldn't you keep it? Well, most of the time, you actually don't. You can see Hunter-Ace and Gallant actually tossing it against Rogue. The most common mistake for new pilots of this deck is to play Skipper on turn 1, which lets it die without achieving its true purpose of activating either A. Card draw with Battle Rage, B. Armor gain with Armorsmith, C. Removal while developing Blood Boil Brutes, or D. All of the above. This card is just that flexible. Ideally, you should save Skipper for those big combos, which generally aren't available till about turns 5 to 7. So most of the time, you don't keep the Skipper in the opener. Yet there are situations where Skipper is so crucial for a guaranteed mid-game clear that it can be argued that it's still a keep despite not doing anything for the first few turns. For example, in the matchup versus Spell Druid, Skipper can be kept, especially with its combo activators, because in many panouts, the warrior isn't able to pressure hard enough that the druid has to forego their Glowfly Swarm turn. Instead, another strong game plan for warrior is to hold the risky Skipper plus cheap minion plus Blood Boil Brute combo in hand. Against token boards, the Blood Boils can often come down for free, allowing the warrior to not only remove a druid board, but swing the pressure back against them. With a strong enough hand, even Blood Boil Brute can be considered in the mulligan for that matchup. Finally, what I think is the most interesting point of contention in the mulligans is Battle Rage. When saved for a good risky Skipper turn, Battle Rage is the most efficient card draw in the current meta. But if you're constantly being pressured and don't have the time to play it, it seems pretty awful just to 2-mana draw 1. I've gotten very mixed opinions on this one. There are players who keep it even against decks that pressure, like you can see Language Hacker does here against Highlander Hunter, and Swids does so against Rogue. Granted, it might be more tempting to keep when you already have the Skipper in hand, like in Swids' case. The advice I got from No Hands and Gallum was that it's more likely to keep Skipper in matchups that go long, like versus Priest for example. Personally, I think it makes the most sense to keep Battle Rage in that matchup because Priest can stabilize against Warrior's early boards, and then the game plan can shift to drawing as fast as possible to get to that big OTK turn with Kor'kron Elite and Bloodsworn Mercenary. Ultimately, I think almost any card in this warrior deck could be kept under the right circumstances. Even things like Sky Raider, Tol'vir, and Bomb Wrangler, they seem decent because they're just on-curve plays. But are they good enough? As a relatively new deck, invented only in this meta, and with fresh builds and archetypes centered around risky Skipper coming out of the woodwork every week, nothing is really set in stone yet. Personally, I think it'd still take me a few hundred games before I feel confident saying something is a keep or a throw, but until next time, I guess I'll have to mull it over.